welcome to our next chapter. I'm solo today. So today we're speaking about, I'm speaking about, so used to being a we. If you've been following our vlog for a while, you would have heard the story of our first loss. It was spontaneous and I didn't really have a lot of side effects afterwards, but we had two subsequent losses and they were both ectopic pregnancies. An ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy that has gotten stuck in your fallopian tube. Now all pregnancies are fertilized in the fallopian tube, but an ectopic pregnancy doesn't move down into the uterus as it should, and this could be because of something being wrong with your tube or something possibly being wrong with the egg itself. There's no way of moving the pregnancy out of the fallopian tube once it's gotten stuck there. Medical science just doesn't have the capability at this point. And so all ectopic pregnancies will end in miscarriage. And most women have no idea that they are having an ectopic pregnancy because the symptoms are very similar to a normal miscarriage. You would have some bleeding, some cramping. Cramping could extend up to the shoulder and the back area, lots of bloating, and you might not actually know that it's an ectopic pregnancy until you go in and see a doctor. So let me tell you the story about ours. Our first miscarriage happened in 2016. We've spoken about this already. As my due date for that pregnancy came closer, I should have been at the end of my pregnancy at the end of July. And so as that date approached, I started getting quite ill at school all the time. I was throwing up, I was feeling very sick and woozy, and since the first miscarriage I didn't really have a real return of my cycle, so I couldn't tell you if I was pregnant or not, and I was convinced that I wasn't because I took a couple of pregnancy tests and they were both negative. So obviously I believed that I wasn't pregnant and that it must have been something else. But I've always been so afraid of going to doctors because, you start believing that there's just something, your cycle's just weird and it's never going to be normal. So eventually my husband convinced me to go to a doctor, and I finally allowed him to take me to the doctor. Finally listened to what he had to say, and I went to the doctor and he confirmed that I was losing another pregnancy, but he needed to tell if the pregnancy was terminating on its own or if it was an ectopic pregnancy that was stuck in my tube. On the scan they couldn't see anything, and so I had to go in for blood tests to test my HCG levels, which is the hormone that shows that you are pregnant. So I had to go in for a couple of blood tests, and then after the third one he called me immediately at school and said I need to come back immediately. I need to come in for an emergency surgery because it's clear that this pregnancy is ectopic. It's the HCG levels were rising instead of falling as they would with a miscarriage. So anyway, I ended up having to go into hospital. Let me not get into how terrible of a process it was to get my principal to believe that I was actually in need of surgery. And I ended up having a laparoscopy, which is a keyhole surgery, they call it. They actually insert a camera through your navel and they make two small cuts to check each fallopian tube, remove the pregnancy and check if the other tube is okay. The recovery period for this differs, it depends on your general health. It took me quite a long time to recover. And there are things that they explain in hospital, but you're so out of it, you don't really know what's happening. And you don't really listen to what might happen afterwards. But afterwards you also get this really bad shoulder pain, and that's because they use a gas to inflate your stomach so that they have more space to work. That gas takes a while to absorb into your body and work its way out, and it can end up giving you shoulder pain, and it also leaves you very bloated for a long time. So that was what happened with our second pregnancy loss. An entire year later, almost exactly to the date, I started feeling ill again, and I thought there is no way that this could possibly be happening again. There's no way. I had all the same symptoms, the same pattern, the same feelings, but I refused to believe that there was something wrong with me. Now, it's very easy to say, oh, you're so dumb, like why didn't you do anything? But to me it was a feeling of complete disbelief, like not a third time, there's no way I'm losing a third child. And also a matter of not really getting the healthcare that I should have been getting from my gynae at the time. There wasn't a lot of follow-up, there wasn't a lot of attention to my case, and so an entire year after my second loss, I hadn't seen him enough for him to really help me navigate my way through this third loss. Anyway, I ended up walking around for I think over a week with intense pain, to the point where like I'd be nauseous in the morning but it'd go away, and then I'd be able to teach and do what I needed to do. We were slap bang at the end of a run up to our school musical, which I was helping with, and I just convinced myself it's stress, you know, and I need to be at school. I can't miss any time because this musical is happening this week or the following week. And eventually the pain was so bad, like one day, I'll never forget, it was a Monday, I was standing in class and I had to double over. I couldn't stand up again properly after that. I could barely walk from my classroom. But me being in complete denial, I still went to rehearsals after school, and I sat there in pain, and eventually I had to say to myself, you know what, I need to go to the doctor. I drove myself home, and then I went into this very weird shock almost, where I made Alvin buy me McDonald's to eat because I was hungry, knowing that I could be going in for a surgery. I went to take a shower, I shaved my legs. I was like, people are going to examine me, I need to shave my legs. It was just a very weird way of me being in complete denial over what was happening. So I eventually, I think in the evening, we called the doctor, and the doctor said, you go back into his office and he'll meet us there, and I need to be examined immediately. And then he confirmed it's another ectopic pregnancy and I would have another laparoscopy. You would think that going through this again would make it easier. It doesn't get easier. There's no way that it gets easier. The recovery was about the same. I really struggled, but thankfully I was at a different school and I had some support from, you know, friends at school, fellow staff members who were really caring and empathetic, and who checked up on me and took my classes and didn't make me feel guilty about being absent. When I went back to school, my kids were incredible. They really made it possible for me to face every day, and I'm very grateful for that. Now, why would I make this video and tell you, why would we make any of the videos and tell you about these experiences? It's because I felt so alone. Even though I had incredible support from my family, from my friends, from my husband, from my colleagues, I still felt alone, and I felt betrayed. I felt like my body had betrayed me. I've said this before, all my life I've wanted to be a mommy. All my life I've wanted to be pregnant. I've also had this dream of being pregnant alongside somebody that's really close to me. And in the last 4 years, or 5 years now, almost, I've watched so many people get pregnant and have their babies and move on past me. People have had 2 kids in this time, and we still haven't had a single successful pregnancy. And it just felt like there must be something wrong with me. It must be me. I must be the problem. I must have done something horrible. I probably deserve this. And that's a complete lie. I didn't deserve anything that happened to me. My husband didn't deserve to have to go through this as well. My mother didn't deserve to have to lose grandchildren. Neither did Alvin's parents. Nobody deserves this. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Not that I have enemies, but you know what I mean. And so the reason that we make these videos, the reason why I talk about this, is because I want you to know, if this has happened to you and if you have to go through this, you are not alone. And I want you to know that you should not ignore your body. Don't ignore the signs. Go to the doctor. If you feel like you can't take a day off Rather take a couple of hours off and go and see someone. Reach out, ask somebody you know, send me a message, you can find me on social media. But don't ignore your body. I did that. And with our third loss, I lost one of my fallopian tubes. The reason that the pain was so intense is because I actually ruptured a tube because I decided to walk around. By the time I got to hospital, I had internal bleeding. I could have died. An ectopic pregnancy, if left alone, can kill you. And there is no reason for someone to have to go through losing their lives because women tend to downplay their pain. You know, I've been through this before. I felt worse pain. Oh, my period is worse than this sometimes. I can manage. Don't ignore these signs because it could have ended up so much worse for me. There's so much information online about what a miscarriage could look like, and I think I've said this before, advocate for yourself. Demand better healthcare if you feel like your doctor is brushing you off. With my first ectopic pregnancy, I went to my GP because I didn't want to go to a gynae because if you've been to one, it's not liquor. The GP actually gave me something to take that could have killed me because it could have actually increased the chances of a massive rupture, even though I did end up having a rupture later on. But I went to this guy and I felt like he wasn't really listening to what I had to say, and thank goodness I actually the very next day ended up going to a gynecologist who knew what I was talking about. I'll also say that you don't have to settle for what they say to you at the hospital. With both ectopic procedures, they wanted to put me in a maternity ward. Imagine just chilling, losing my baby or having lost my baby and then being around all these mothers and newborns. It would have been horrible. And again, thank goodness I had the presence of mind to say no. And my doctor also said, no, there's no way she's going to a maternity ward. And then also, even though my gynae was great throughout the processes, he was great in the moment of emergency, he didn't really take as much care of me as I deserve. He didn't really pay attention to my case. He didn't really give me other options or avenues to follow. He didn't send me for tests or anything to find out why this was recurring. It was just kind of like, keep trying, you're young enough. Maybe we'll put you on some medication. Maybe we should put you back on the pill. Like, he just kind of wasn't paying attention. And thank God now I found a doctor who genuinely cares about my case and has given me real proper guidance as to how to get my body back to optimal health to be able to conceive, hopefully one day. So that's my story. That's what ectopic pregnancy is. That's what it could look like. Don't ignore the signs. I've said this already. I'm repeating myself. Okay. Anyway, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, follow, do all those things. You can find me on social media. You can find our handles at the end of the video on the last slide. But please, please, please share. There may be women in your family who have experienced the same things and feel completely alone like I did. You don't have to feel alone. You are not alone. And the women in your family or friends list are not alone either. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you next time. Probably with Alvin and maybe even Bailey. Bye.